Right now, you can answer a simple question without even thinking. What did you do yesterday? Your mind reaches back, finds a day, and replays it. Now answer another one. What will you do tomorrow? Again, no effort. You can picture it, plan it, worry about it. You move through time in your head the way you walk across a room. Backward, forward, wherever you want to go. It feels like the most basic thing a mind can do. But deep in the Amazon, there is a group of people who cannot do this. Not because something is wrong with them, because their language never gave them the tools. And what they reveal about you is far stranger than anything wrong with them. They're called the Pirahã, a few hundred people living along a single river in the Brazilian rainforest. For decades, almost no outsider could speak with them. Then a missionary named Daniel Everett arrived in 1977, sent to translate the Bible into their language so he could convert them. He stayed for years. He raised his family among them, and slowly he realized that the thing he had come to do might be impossible, because the Pirahã language broke nearly every rule linguists thought a human language had to follow. Let's start with time, because time is where it gets strange. In English, almost every sentence is stamped with it. I walk, I walked, I will walk. You cannot open your mouth without locating yourself somewhere on a line stretching from the past into the future. We do it so automatically we don't even notice we're doing it. The Pirahã language has no such system. No fixed words for yesterday. No fixed words for tomorrow. No grammar that places an event in a past or a future the way ours does. Their language lives almost entirely in the now, and this is not a poverty of the mind. It is a different shape of it. Everett came to believe the Pirahã follow what he called an immediacy of experience principle. They talk about what they have seen or what someone who saw it told them directly. The distant past, the far future, abstractions about things no living person witnessed. These simply fall outside the edges of how they speak. A story passed down through 10 generations holds no special weight to them because no one alive saw it happen. Now think about what that does. We treat the past as a place. We store it, replay it, regret it. We treat the future as a place too, and we spend enormous amounts of our lives there, anxious about a tomorrow that does not yet exist. The Pirahã, by Everett's account, are among the most content people he had ever met. They laughed constantly. They showed little of the anxiety that follows the rest of us around like a shadow. And he began to wonder whether the two facts were connected, whether some of our suffering comes not from time itself, but from a mind that never stops traveling through it. But the Pirahã language did something else, something that landed like an earthquake in the science of language. It appeared to have no numbers. Not no large numbers. No numbers at all. No word for one. No word for two. They had words that meant roughly a small amount and a larger amount, relative and slippery, but nothing that pinned down an exact quantity. And when Everett and other researchers tried to teach them to count, something remarkable happened. They couldn't. Adults sat through months of lessons trying to learn the numbers 1 through 10 in Portuguese. And at the end, not one of them could reliably do it. They could not even consistently match a row of objects to an identical row placed in front of them once the rows grew past a handful. This was not a question of intelligence. These were sharp, capable people who could survive in a rainforest that would kill most of us in a week. It was that, without words to anchor exact quantities, the concept itself never formed. The number, it seems, lives partly in the language. Take away the word, and the idea has nowhere to stand. And here's where the story stopped being an anthropology footnote and became a war. Because there was a man whose entire theory of the human mind hung on the opposite claim. Noam Chomsky, perhaps the most influential linguist who ever lived, had spent half a century arguing that every human language shares a deep hidden structure, a universal grammar wired into the brain at birth. And one feature he and his colleagues had called the very core of human language was recursion, the ability to nest an idea inside another idea endlessly. The man who lives in a house that sits by the river that floods in the spring. A thought folded into a thought folded into a thought. The sentences stayed flat, simple, one clear statement after another. with none of the deep nesting Chomsky's theory said all languages must contain. If he was right, then the supposed universal core of human language was not universal at all. It could be shaped, limited, even erased by the culture a person grew up in that he'd spent decades inside. Linguists flew to the Amazon to check his work. Papers were written to dismantle him, and papers were written to defend him. The argument is still not fully settled today, but what nobody could easily wave away was the lived reality Everett kept describing. A people who did not count, did not fixate on the past, did not store up for a future they couldn't see, and who seemed, by every measure he could find, remarkably at peace. So what does this actually mean for you? Here is the unsettling part. For most of history, we assumed thought came first and language was just the costume we dressed it in. You have an idea, then you find words for it. But the Pirahã suggest something closer to the reverse, that the words you are given quietly build the walls of what you can think. The researchers found that the Pirahã couldn't hold exact numbers in their heads not because their minds were weaker, but because their language had never handed them the hooks to hang those numbers on. And if that is true of numbers, what else is it true of? When you reach back to remember yesterday, you're not just recalling an event. You're using a machinery of tense your language installed in you before you could walk. When you lie awake dreading next Tuesday, that dread is only possible because your language gave you a vivid, grammatically built future to be afraid of. The Pirahã, missing the machinery, are also missing the fear. They are not less than us. In one specific and haunting way, they may be lighter. This idea has a name. Linguists call it linguistic relativity, the notion that the language you speak shapes the way you perceive reality itself. For most of the last century, it was treated as a fringe idea, even an embarrassing one. But case after case has chipped away at the doubt. There are languages with no left or right, only north, south, east, and west, and their speakers always know which way they're facing, even with their eyes closed, even underground. There are languages that divide the color spectrum at different points, and their speakers actually see the boundary between two shades faster than people whose language draws no line there. The world is not simply out there, identical for everyone. Some of it is built by the words you happen to have been born into, which brings us back to that single river in the Amazon, and the question that started all of this. Is time real, or is it something your language invented and then convinced you is real? The honest answer is that we don't fully know. Time as physics describes it is strange, bending, relative, nothing like the steady line we feel ourselves walking along. But the line we feel, the past behind us and the future ahead, may be less a fact about the universe and more a habit of speech, drilled into us so early and so deeply that we mistake it for the world itself. The Pirahã are not a window into a simpler people. They are a window into ourselves, into the invisible scaffolding holding up the inside of your skull. Every time you say yesterday, every time you say tomorrow, you are running a program that was written into you by a language you did not choose, in a childhood you cannot remember. It feels like the bedrock of reality. It may be closer to a story your tribe has been telling for a very long time. And somewhere along that river tonight, while you lie awake rehearsing a past you can't change and a future that hasn't come, there are people drifting off to sleep who carry none of that weight, in a present so complete it has no edges and no need for the word.